I now invite the President of the General Assembly to address the committee. You have the floor, sir.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Raitis Polaskas, Permanent Representative of Lithuania, Madam Under Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Let me begin by congratulating you, Chair, and the other Bureau members on your deserved election to guide the First Committee through its work program during the 78th session. My office and I look forward to working closely with you during this session to ensure that together we address some of the most pressing concerns of our times. It is a great honor indeed for me to be here this morning to address this First Committee. Your work underpins one of the key pillars of the United Nations and is critical for our joint pursuit of peace and prosperity. As you are aware, peace and prosperity are among the 4 pillars I selected for the theme of the 78th session. The just concluded high-level week was not only the busiest in recent memory, it was one that also saw impressive engagement by governments at the highest level, an engagement to which it is absolutely crucial to restore and strengthen a UN multilateral system anchored in the UN Charter. But we are also mindful that the high-level week and the 78th session takes place against the backdrop of the greatest geopolitical crisis we have seen in decades. As I said repeatedly since assuming office, among other threats to our peace and security, spanning Africa to the Middle East, as well as the situation in Haiti, the continued violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of a fellow UN member, Ukraine, constitutes a serious violation of the UN Charter. The nuclear threat, meanwhile, is a real existential threat that casts a dark shadow over all that we seek to do in sustaining global peace and security. Amidst these challenges, the First Committee has the great responsibility to break the deadlock and to bring the disarmament agenda back on track. As you begin your work, I urge all member states to recommit to the peaceful resolution of conflicts, and importantly, to a world free of nuclear weapons. The rise of nuclear stockpiles is a deeply disturbing trend taking place alongside technological advancement that have made nuclear weapons even more deadly. We know these munitions are singularly inhumane. A weapon that can wipe out all of humanity is not simply a weapon. It is a life-threatening verdict against all living beings. I must implore member states to refrain from inflammatory rhetoric on their use. I urge you instead to fulfill the promise of the NPT and to bring the CTBT into force. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, our efforts towards sustaining peace must not stop here. We need stronger accountability and regulation on conventional arms control as well. Resolute action is needed, including from this committee, to counteract the misuse, illicit transfer, and accumulation of conventional weapons. The growing reliance on incendiary weapons, despite the ban on their use, is equally concerning. These issues must be addressed responsibly in accordance with the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. Lethal autonomous weapons systems, meanwhile, are raising new ethical concerns over outsourcing decisions in life and death to weaponize software, while the malicious use of cyberspace is also on the rise. To reduce cyber attacks, I urge member states to redouble their efforts to implement the agreed framework of responsible state behavior. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, our focus on accountability must extend as well into outer space and its sustainable use. Space is our common heritage, and it must be used for peaceful purposes only. Importantly, as also recommended in the Secretary General's report on our common agenda, sustainability for all must be embedded into all efforts. However, we see the growth of orbital debris, satellite congestion, commercialization of space through the exploitation of resources, and the deployment of anti-satellite weapons. At the same time, proper regulation is sorely lacking. It is clear we need legally binding rules to govern our solar system and the deepest reaches of the cosmos. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, this year the Committee for Program and Coordination was not able to agree on 10 programs, which the main committee should now consider. I urge you, Chair and Committee, to urgently examine the relevant open programs and to share your conclusions with the Fifth Committee as soon as possible, to allow the latter to take your input into account. It would be remiss on my part to conclude without recalling that this committee can, as it did in the past, rise to the occasion. In 1946, the first committee came forward in a collective push for disarmament, which culminated in the submission of the very first resolution ever adopted by the General Assembly. To maintain its relevance and resourcefulness, the first committee must, in the same spirit, unite and recommit to the shared interests of humanity. I urge you again, choose joint priorities over national agendas. And together, I repeat, together, ignite common solutions that break the chains of conflict and intransigence that are holding our collective sustainable development hostage. This is truly the imperative of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President of the General Assembly, for your statement and also recommendations given to the members of this committee.